Hello and welcome to this module, Selection. This module discusses how to select the best employee that fit organization needs. The textbook provides methodical descriptions of the 8 steps you need to follow while selecting an employee, from the application process to the screening and testing process, and all the way to the hiring process. I won't go into the details because these steps are easy to follow in the textbook. The key thing to remember here is that as you make each cut in the process to select the best employee, you need to make sure you are not discriminating anyone illegally. So how can you avoid illegal discrimination in the selection process? We'll talk about the answer to this question for the rest of the lecture. The UGESP, or Uniform Guideline on Employee Decision Procedure, provides guidelines on how to avoid illegal discrimination during hiring. It identifies what the federal government considers to be an employment test, and how these tests can be used in making employment decisions. Most importantly, the Uniform Guideline identifies the acceptable types of validity that can be used to validate employment tests: content validity, criterion-related validity, and construct validity. And it notes that these tests must be reliable. Let's talk about validity and its 3 types. What is validity? Validity means you are measuring what you claim you are measuring. When making selection decisions, employers are making predictions about how employees will perform in the future. Selection is basically using the predictors you can measure now to predict what will happen in the future. There are many kinds of predictors an employer can measure, such as the employee's intelligence, weight, or height. To ensure the usefulness of a predictor, we must make sure it is a valid measurement. It must satisfy 3 different validity tests pictured here. Content validity is making sure the content of your measurement is valid. For example, if you want to hire a science teacher for a high school, and the measurement you choose is to use the score of a physics test, you plan to hire the person who scores the highest on this measurement. However, after you did a job analysis, you discover that a science teacher does not only teach physics, but also chemistry, biology, and psychology. Then you can conclude that the predictor you chose, physics test score, does not have content validity. It does not really measure of all the contents of a high school science teacher. Construct validity makes sure what you are measuring matches the concept you are trying to measure. Often in the selection process, we're trying to measure concepts that are not directly observable. For example, you might want to measure an applicant's intelligence, which is not usually observable. Research has shown that the IQ test is relatively accurate in capturing the construct or concept of intelligence. It is such a popular test that we often refer a person with high levels of intelligence as she has a high IQ. But we need to be clear that IQ is the valid measurement used to measure the construct intelligence. That is, the IQ test is a tool to measure intelligence. Because there is no scientific evidence showing that the size of a human brain is related to intelligence, therefore, the size of the brain does not have construct validity when measuring intelligence. In fact, Female brains are, on average, smaller than male brains, but both genders have the same intelligence on average. In my live class, at this point, some students will comment that they can tell a person's intelligence by how they look. They might say something like, "I can usually tell if a person is smart or not by looking at her face." Do you think facial features is a valid measurement for intelligence? Definitely not. In fact, this kind of statement is a classic perception error we make, called halo effect. Halo effect occurs when we use one aspect of a person to represent the whole person. For example, we might think people with glasses are smarter than those who don't wear glasses. Appearances, like the brain size, doesn't have construct validity in measuring intelligence. Criterion-related validity is a little bit complicated, and I'll use a few more slides to explain. I'll first talk about what does criterion mean. Criterion means goal. So the first question you need to ask yourself before you even start your selection process is, what is your goal? For example, for high-end hotels such as the Westin Hotel, their goal for the selection process probably is to hire employees who can deliver exceptional customer service. So the goal here is to hire warm and friendly employees. But for DreamWorks, the criterion of interest may be completely different. What do you think DreamWorks' criterion of interest is in their selection process? Probably creativity. You can see that depending on your criterion or your goal, the selection process is going to be very different. Because you may not want to have highly creative people to work in customer service, as they may not be the most relatable individuals in the world. Now we have talked about what is criterion. Let's move on to criterion-related validity. Criterion-related validity is making sure there is a strong relationship between what you are measuring now and your goal. So your X will lead to your Y. Let me use an example here. Suppose you're set out to hire a singer to record a record. Having a good voice probably best predict being a good singer. The applicant's height, on the other hand, probably won't predict singing abilities. So the predictor, having a good voice, in this case, have a better criterion-related validity because it's more related to your goal. So far, we have covered what is validity. We will talk about the last component, reliability. Reliability is to make sure the predictor you're using is consistent and dependable. You can call a car reliable if every time you turn the key, the car turns on and doesn't break down. We also want to make sure our selection process works the same every time. For example, if you're selecting employees for a certain position, you might be having a good day on a Friday and a bad day on Monday. Your interviews got influenced by your mood, and you hired more employees on Friday when you're in a good mood. In this case, the interviews you gave have low reliability because they're not consistent and dependable. How do you fix this low reliability problem? Probably by using a panel of interviewers instead of just one interviewer. Validity and reliability issues are very important to the selection process. It is not only the key to avoid illegal discrimination, but really the keystones for selection process. Please spend more time and have a solid understanding of them. This slide completes this module. We talked about what is selection, the 8 steps of selection, and validity and reliability. I hope by studying this chapter, you'll be able to make valid and reliable selection decisions.